What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing creepy, tall humanoids. Between the experiences I've been having my entire life, and now with all of the work I'm doing and have been for the last few years in the area of paranormal and supernatural phenomenon, I've had to come to and deal with the realization that for so much of it, there simply are no real or definitive answers. It comes with the territory. The topic of discussion for today are the pale humanoid entities that I keep seeing and receiving emails and reports about more often now than ever before. People claim to be having encounters with them all over the world, all of the time nowadays, and it terrifies yet fascinates me like so much of what I cover here on this channel and in this community with you guys. These very tall and extremely pale humanoids seem to be in a class of high strangeness all their own, so let's jump right in and maybe get to know a little bit more about them. Our first witness said he was driving somewhere on a remote and desolate back road near the Canadian-American border when he had a terrifying and quite odd encounter with one of these things. Things is the only real way that I can describe it, and of course he was driving on a desolate back road, right? It was around 4 in the morning and he was driving home from a friend's house. It wasn't a very hard or long trip by any stretch of the imagination, but there was about a 10-minute time period where he would be driving through a rugged, pitch black, and dense forested area. He was driving along at his usual rate of speed on the night in question, and we all can relate to this, I'm sure. We've all done this at one point or another, I think. I know that when I'm familiar with an area, even one that may be considered a bit more dangerous than most other places where I'd be driving, I'm not as careful as I should be because it's almost like I'm driving it out of habit. That was what our witness was initially doing in the forested area, but almost immediately, he came super close to hitting a deer and this spooked him. So he slowed down and took it extra slow for the rest of the drive through the pitch dark blackness. He was paying extra attention to the road and really taking his time, but something popped into his vision from out of the darkness ahead that still haunts him to this day. He said of it, quote, "As I approached the exit of the forest, there was a left curve in the road and an adjacent dirt road with a white wooden fence lining it going up a hill to what I would imagine would lead to someone's property/home. As I was making the turn, I saw something in my headlights, my brights, at the edge of the fence. It was a tall, pale, milky white creature with a bald head. Its eyes reflected back, clothesless. Its arms and legs just as white as its bald head. I saw it for a second or two as it made a move to dive behind the fence. I braked and backed up slowly and pointed my lights at the fence, looking for any kind of movement. I was parked on the highway, which was abandoned at 5 a.m. My heart was racing and I didn't know why. I must have sat there for a minute before I calmed down, didn't see any movement, and decided I'd better not go and investigate, or maybe I'd become a missing person, and continued my journey home. To this day, I still wouldn't have gotten out to investigate unless I had a weapon or something with me. So the only description I have of this thing is tall, pale, bald, and human-like features, but no noticeable hair or eyebrows," end quote. That sounds utterly terrifying. I don't think I would have gotten out of the car, but being a medium, I wonder if I would have gotten something from it remotely, from inside my vehicle. Like sometimes I do, like virtually, maybe, maybe not, but I did wonder when I went through this. This sounds somewhat like a ghoul, but taller and more pale white than gray. Also, I immediately started to wonder about the pale crawlers and their ability to maybe possibly stand up. This is, of course, all just speculation that ran through my mind as I read through this encounter. Let's take a look at some more encounters and see if maybe something more familiar pops up as we go through them. Our next witness was driving in upstate New York on December 25th, 2007. It was Christmas night. He was on his way to visit a friend in a very rural and gated community. As he drove up to the area where his friend lived, he said, quote, "I reached a section of road that had barren fields on either side and woods set back. Houses were probably nestled back into the trees. As I drove, I noticed what looked like something walking up ahead on the opposite side of the road, coming in my direction. Mind you, I was still going about 20 miles per hour the whole time, so it was probably less than a minute by the time the walker came into clear view. I got a quick scan of it from my windshield before my car and it were exactly parallel. This is what I saw. It was not a person. It stood on 2 long legs with long arms hanging down from its shoulders. It was strong looking, lean, muscular, but not beefy in stature. It looked thin at the same time. It stood at least 7 feet tall. It was light colored, not sure whether it was white, tan, yellow, or grayish. It didn't appear to have fur, but there was some texture to the skin. It wasn't smooth. There appeared to be something coming down off its back. I don't know what this was. All I can recall about its face is the small features it had, but the mouth and jaw were noticeably larger. And it had two pointed things atop its head. Two things going straight upward with something mingled between the two things. That's what I got from a quick scan and from my observation of it as it neared my car and my car neared it. As my car became parallel to it within a split second, I went from looking out my windshield to looking at it from my driver's side window. In that moment, its face quickly peered down at me, and all I remember was the mouth opened wide. Out came a remarkable scream that I'll never forget. Gives me the chills just thinking about it. It consisted of a high-pitched shrill/shriek, enveloped by a deep guttural growl. Both sounds happened simultaneously in that scream. I kept driving all the while. This was all happening so fast that I didn't even have a chance to be scared or shocked or anything. I continued driving and went past my friend's house and just drove home. Called him to tell him what happened and that I just needed to get back. I was probably running on adrenaline to get back home. Later on, I was in total shock after it sank in. Had my driver's side window been fully opened, it would have touched me or worse, taken me. I'm certain of that. To this day, I still haven't worked out what this was, end quote. Maybe we should call these things the pale walkers as opposed to pale crawlers, right? Could they be one and the same? I wonder if this second encounter just saw a lot more detail due to the proximity to the creature and the longer length of time he was able to get a look at it, or if this one was that much different than the first witness's encounter. I'm not sure, but I wish I knew, because things like that are what haunt me at the end of the day. So this one had two spike-like things on its head, but with something in between the spikes and something coming off its back. I assumed he meant the top of the back, so that more than likely leaves out the chance that it was a tail, but again, how would I even know that? And making assumptions could be one of the most dangerous things someone could do when investigating the supernatural and or paranormal. It's just not a good idea. Next, I'm bringing you a case that I found on Phantoms and Monsters, and it comes from Scotland. This is how wide-stretched and far-reaching this phenomenon is, guys. It's all over the place. Like I said in the beginning, it's happening all over the world and seems to be being reported a lot more often lately than ever before. That's not to say that people weren't seeing these things all along, just now the reports are much more accessible. This witness said he and some friends were just walking home from a park one night when something terrifying happened. He said, quote, "Me and my friend were walking around a massive park in my town and it was around 11 p.m. We were just walking around having a smoke and a laugh, being teenagers and stuff. By this point, it was pitch black. There were no lights on in the park, and I'm a bit on edge because I'm not keen on the dark. And I was kind of paranoid from the weed, but I'm just going to cut to the interesting part. So me and my friend, let's call him Sam, walked towards the actual swing park within the park, and we're like 10 feet from the park. There's this unexplainable rancid smell that physically caused us to gag. We joke and say something about it being from this girl in school we didn't like and headed back to the park. The smell is only getting stronger, and I glance over at the small wall surrounding the park. There is a bench, and squatting behind the bench, at least 5 foot tall squatting, was what looked like a freakishly tall guy. He appeared to be naked and hairless. We both kind of stared for a minute before looking at each other as if to say, yo, you can see that too, right? And then the thing started laughing like a 4-year-old girl. We got the F out of there and ran like our lives depended on it and went home. We just laughed it off and kind of forgot about it. At least Sam forgot about it. But it was weeks ago and I'm still spooked and refuse to go near the park after dark, end quote. Wow. That's almost all I can say about that one. The fact that it giggled at the end there and in the voice of a 4-year-old girl makes it tremendously more terrifying and creepy, in my opinion. So there was a part there that was a little bit confusing to me. I think what he was saying, he said, quote, the swing in the park, end quote, but in the same sentence he said, quote, we were about 10 feet from the park, end quote, but then he said they walked to the park. I don't know, I just knew someone was going to notice it and put it in the comments. That's a teenager for you, and that's really not relevant to the encounter, except that it's hard to picture in my head where they were as far as proximity to the creature. I was wondering from the very beginning when the smell aspect of it all was going to come in. Once again, just as with the pale crawlers, there is a foul odor with these things. I find that that one little detail is coming up more and more in encounters with all different kinds of entities lately. Because the thing was crouching behind the bench, they didn't get the best look at it, but to estimate that it was approximately 5 foot tall while squatting, now that's incredible. I know it's different for me due to the fact of how familiar I am able to get with 98% of entities, spirits, ETs, and other energies I come across, but it bugs me that no one is even trying to seek out further answers while in the presence of these things. Not that I'm encouraging you guys, but I mean, how many of you would want to know more and just go for it? And on the other hand, how many of you would run in fear and possibly regret it for the rest of your lives? No judgment, of course, but let me know in the comments below, please, which one you would be more apt or inclined to do. At least as far as what you think, because we always think that we may or may not, or definitely would or wouldn't act a certain way in a certain situation. And more than likely, we have no idea until we're actually in it, right? That's being human. So far, these creatures have been encountered on desolate back roads in the middle of the night and in a dark place. All places where the witnesses were quickly able to flee in order to get away from the terrifying entities. But what happens when it's much closer to someone's home and they're stuck with not only the memory of what happened to them every single time they look around them, but also when they have to be where they saw the thing all the time? Basically, that makes it almost inescapable. A witness who calls himself Keanu said his encounter happened late one night while he and a friend were hanging out at his house. Throughout the whole night, they both kept hearing random, strange, and somewhat creepy noises coming from just outside. The noises weren't the usual noises outside that Keanu and his friend were used to, and it creeped them out a little bit, even though they didn't go and investigate right away. I can understand that too, because sometimes it's just easier to brush things like strange noises off as non-issues. They decided it was most likely some animal they just weren't familiar with and tried to forget about it. However, as they kept hearing the noises and as they got more intense, the two young men ended up eventually going outside to investigate. They just couldn't leave it alone, and that makes me wonder, like I do with almost everything else, if they were somehow, and for whatever reason, lured in some way and made literally unable to let it go. Makes perfect sense in my mind, knowing as we do how most evil and malevolent entities and things feed off of our negative emotions, with fear being the most intense. Perhaps they want to be spotted, even if just a little bit, by human beings so that they get a big old heaping helping of our fear energy. It isn't like the fear dissipates or disappears right away, and therefore, especially and more so when it's in or close to someone's home, they could feast for possibly weeks off of just one little sighting. What do you guys think? So the guys stepped outside to have a cigarette and see if they saw or noticed anything that could be making the strange noises, and Keanu said of what happened when they went to go investigate, finally, quote, "My friend began moaning in what I can only describe as pure primal fear, so I began asking him what, and suddenly my dog started barking. I looked to the right off the small porch and saw a tall, extremely thin, ghostly pale creature. It was a horrid humanoid figure. I only saw it for a moment before I heard the rocks under it scatter, moving like someone was moving inhumanly fast over them. It was gone over the fence into the green belt behind my house in a split second. I'd say it was perhaps 7 feet tall and humanoid in how it looks. I theorized that the creature was on top of my roof before, as there is no other way to describe the sounds we heard or how the creature appeared so silently and so suddenly," end quote. I had to really sit and think about this one, guys. So Keanu said that he thought that the entity came from the roof because of the noises. So I guess that's where they seem to be coming from at first. But I mean, what kind of animal hangs out on someone's roof making all kinds of strange noises? It's not that I don't believe the story, because I do believe it, and I do believe it very much. Otherwise, I wouldn't be bringing it to you right now. But I just wonder what led him to that initial conclusion. Secondly, I'm assuming, due to some of the things he said, that there was a gravel driveway or a lot of gravel around otherwise, but I wonder, how did they not hear it land then? Also, could it move silently, but it just wanted to make it known that it was there, either to feed off of the fear of these two kids or for some other unknown and unimaginable reason? I don't know why, but maybe it's due to the fact that I can't shake the feeling that these things are some sort of distant cousin from the pale crawlers. I know. Sorry, I need to let it go. But that did surprise me more than anything, how quickly Keanu claimed the entity was able to move and make its great escape. If that's the case and they can move as quickly as he said it did, then they're definitely making themselves visible because they could easily get somewhere to hide fast enough for no one to be able to see them, right? I mean, even the one from the first encounter that waited until it was seen first before it tried hiding behind the fence, and then the other one we discussed that half-heartedly tried to hide itself allegedly behind a small bench, it stands to reason, at least in my opinion, that they do this for effect and nothing more. They might want to see or feed off of our reactions, mainly, I say again, the fear more than anything else, but maybe the shock too. Who knows? Maybe they get a kick out of watching humans flee confused and terrified just by setting their sights on them. So back to Keanu. He said that he believes the encounter he and his friend had that night at his house could possibly be connected to something else that happened to one of his other friends. He said his friend was either hanging out in or walking through a tunnel of sorts when he had his frightening encounter. At first, it sounded weird that someone would just be chilling in a tunnel, but then I remembered where I partially grew up, in Ridgewood, New Jersey. There's a train station that has a series of tunnels underneath it, underground, that I used to have to walk through all of the time as a teenager and young adult because it made my trip, wherever I was going, that much shorter. I would take the shortcut through the tunnel, and sometimes I did it alone, and never without terror though. If you'd like another video of some of my personal experiences, then let me know. All right, so Keanu believes his friend's encounter and his encounter were connected somehow. He said it wasn't unusual for teenagers to go into the tunnels, and when they did, they always expected to be scared about something or other. This tunnel was located in a rural and wooded, very isolated area, and usually there wasn't anyone else there. He says of what happened to his friend, quote, "A couple of my friends decided to investigate further into the tunnel out of curiosity. You must also make note that they claim this happened a while before my initial experience occurred. They walked deep into the tunnel for probably 10 to 15 minutes. At a certain point later in the tunnel, flashlights are completely necessary. Once that happens, it stoops down. They said there were noticeable amounts of feces that had questionable explanation as to how it all got there, with signs that the tunnel could be inhabited, but by something that couldn't simply be an animal. This is also in a suburban area where homeless people or addicts are extremely uncommon." So you think. "This tunnel in particular, I know for a fact no man will want to take up residence, especially with a small amount of water running through it. They reached a part in the tunnel where it got even lower, and above where it drops down is painted 'Welcome to Hell,' coincidentally. There, they say they saw a tall, pale figure hunched in a way so that it took up most of the height of the tunnel, but was noticeably gaunt and thin. And at that point, they claim to have even seen it move, and they turned tail and frantically sprinted down the tunnel with no regard for the water or the darkness. Given the description of what they witnessed, I would say that these two incidents are likely connected, and the creature in question is likely to be the same one in each story, especially given the vicinity in which they occurred. We now theorize that the creature witnessed at my house dwells in the tunnel during the day and prowls at night. We don't go near the tunnel anymore. I don't think there's a way that this could be a coincidence," end quote. Could these things be some sort of vampire gone wrong, like in the American Horror Story double feature? Has anyone else seen that? If you're talented, you take the black pill and become more talented, rich and famous, but if you have no talent and only think you do, then you turn into a blood-crazed, pale, strange, bald thing. I don't know, that's just what this whole thing made me think of. There are a few somewhat irrelevant things here, but I'll just mention the one. How is it that someone vandalized the tunnel with graffiti, but it would also be unusual for someone to be dwelling or hanging out down there? Just curious, and again, I don't disbelieve what he is claiming, just some of it I feel may have been embellished to make his claims seem more believable in his own mind. So, is it reasonable to think as well that paranormal and supernatural entities poop the way human beings do, and poop what human beings poop? Why would it poop where it lives? I'm being facetious, but of course, in all seriousness, could it be that these things are somewhat and somehow vampiric, as in the blood drinking, darkness dwelling kind, but they're wrong somehow, and that's why they look the way they do and are left to their own devices like this? So far, we've only come across encounters with solitary entities, so I'm wondering if that's just kind of how these things roll. If they're as fast moving as Keanu originally claimed though, and if this was in fact the same entity due to how it looked in the alleged close proximity from the tunnel where it was first encountered to his house where he and another friend came across it a little while later, why didn't it give chase? Does that completely eradicate my bloodsucker theory? Maybe it does, and I guess the energetic type of vampire probably makes more sense here, but I really don't know. Let's move on. There's another report that I found on Phantoms and Monsters where the encounter happened at the person's home, right on their property in Durham, North Carolina, United States. Our witness said his entire family had left and gone visiting with a relative, so he had the whole house to himself. He was looking forward to some alone time in peace and quiet, but that's the last thing he ended up getting, at least by the end of the night. He stayed up late and everything was normal up until he decided to bring his dog out one more time before bed. It was around midnight, and he said of what happened next, quote, "I took her out the back garage door with her long leash. I was wearing socks and didn't feel like getting them soaked. She usually does her business in that little clearing between the kennel and the garage, so I let her walk down through it. Our garage has a single light on the back wall, not LED, not really bright, so I can see her somewhat well while she does it. She was facing me when suddenly her backside lifted almost 1 or 2 feet into the air. Paranormal or not, I effing screamed at this. I assumed some wild dog or something was trying to grab her. She runs back to me and I hear rustling among the rocks, and this figure stops right as it enters a visible view in the light. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. It was tall. I'm 6'2" and I had to look slightly up to see where I thought its head was. It was pale, but not white or gray, just normal pale flesh color, like someone who spends a week or 2 indoors. It was lanky, not really anorexic or anything, but definitely disproportionate. It looked at me for a good 1 to 2 seconds before it backtracked in the quickest manner I could never replicate. As soon as it went, I booked it back inside. I was torn about calling the police if neighbors who had heard my scream hadn't. Behold, half an hour later, the police arrive in my driveway. I told them I had seen a man in the backyard, leaving out the whole tall demon shit going on. I have been contemplating whether it was some creature or some NBA-bound nude meth head. Once again, I don't count myself as a believer in the Bigfoot or Mothman, but I really don't know what the F happened. I'm most definitely not taking the dog out alone anytime soon." End quote. This is what I mean when I ask if this is an actual vampire or perhaps something similar that I haven't thought of or that we aren't even aware of yet, that something went wrong with somehow. Like, it seems like they might change in phases or stages. This one may have been less sick or starved or whatever is happening to them than the other ones we covered here today. Let's not forget that only one witness described the spikes on the head with the thing in between them and something protruding from its back. That's not to say there aren't more, and in fact, I'm 100% certain that there are more than we could ever know about yet of those types of things as well. I'm just saying, to me at least, this all seems kind of like they're phasing from one thing to another. It may very well be too that they start off as human, but there is where the question of what's happening to them comes in and why. Are these supernatural or paranormal creatures, or are they human beings undergoing some sort of supernatural or paranormal transformation? I'm sure I don't know, but I can't wait to hear what you all have to say in the comments below. Just like with almost everything involving what happens when we encounter strange entities from who knows where, who would we even call? Was this one trying to take the witness's dog? It seems that way. Maybe it didn't know the human was out there because he did describe a long leash and hanging back in the garage area due to it being wet outside and him not wanting to get his socks soaked. Is it a sort of cryptid that eats flesh and maybe blood, and would it do the same to an unsuspecting and lone human, as I'm pretty sure it was about to do to that dog? While it seems to me that the one in the last encounter was possibly surprised by the sight of the human and fled when it saw him, it seems like the others were purposely showing themselves and making it very obvious that they were there, when it's also very obvious that they have the ability to get away quickly enough instead of just haphazardly hiding behind one thing or another. There's a report I came across from the UFO Reporting Center that is scarily similar to the encounter we just went over. Once again, the entity was encountered in the person's backyard, and this time it happened in Cheyenne, Wyoming. It was the fall of 2004, and our witness is a self-described mother and housewife. She was watching television in her living room one night as both of her daughters were each in their own room inside of the home. The family's 2 dogs suddenly seemed to be very bothered and agitated, and there was no immediate reasonable explanation as to why they were suddenly behaving the way that they were. Our witness claimed that her dogs are normally very well behaved, quiet, and even docile, at least the majority of the time. The dogs were both standing in front of the dining room windows, chasing their own tails and barking somewhat maniacally and incessantly. She decided to get up and try to see what had them so wound up, because again, she says it was very unusual behavior for them. The dining room window where the dogs were now gathered looked out into the backyard of the home. Our witness got up and walked over to open the door in order to see if anything was there that could explain the odd behavior, and also kind of to show the dogs that whatever it was had gone. She was possibly assuming it was just some sort of regular animal that had the dogs behaving so strangely. She certainly didn't expect what happened next. As soon as she opened the door, she said it all happened so fast. She continued with, quote, As I opened the door, the dogs barged past me as they usually do when they are excited, i.e. to chase a bunny through the fence. On this occasion, they hooked around the door to cross to the back of the house. I took a step out, keeping my hand on the doorknob of the storm door. They had stopped between my two patios shoulder to shoulder and barking hysterically, defensive and afraid at the same time. I saw in front of them standing inside my privacy fence what looked like a bald-headed teenager. I was thinking to myself, hey, what's this tall, skinny, pale, white, bald teenager doing in my backyard? And just then, it turned to look at us just enough to show its right eye. It had big, black, elongated, upslanting eye. It then turned to its left and vanished on the spot. The dogs then ran to the spot where it stood sniffing the ground. Now, I didn't get any supportive reactions from family or friends, so for the last 2 years, I've just put it out of my mind as best as I could. I would raise the issue now and then, but when I hear reports on the news like a sighting over Chicago O'Hare Airport, etc., I am reminded of my encounter. The surprise scared me so bad I had to do Muahz breathing to slow my heart rate down. I did not imagine this. I recall feeling I should look fast as it had no earlobes, no visible nose from my vantage point. It stood right shoulder to us, long arms, long fingers, but I did not count them. I don't recall its feet, but it either wore a skin-tight jumpsuit similar to skin color. I saw a shiny object on its upper left chest. All I could think was, I'm going to die of a heart attack and no one will know what I just saw. I witnessed some paranormal activity in the years past, and I have to wonder if the incidents are related. It is a mystery. I am certain that we are not alone in the universe, but the public seems to be desensitized to this subject as though a disinformation program has been at work since Roswell. People just think a person isn't well if we've had this experience and won't believe it until they see it for themselves. I had always said the universe is so vast, we can't be the only life there is, but I'm left wondering why I was visited, end quote. It disappeared on sight, and she is implying that it was an alien. So it didn't scurry or scuttle away. It didn't run off as quickly as possible. It didn't make any kind of overt or feeble attempt to hide itself. Maybe it was going after the dogs. I don't know. I still feel like it was purposely making itself be seen. And again, we have another bit of it. No ears, no nose. So from what this witness is implying, at least from what I understood from what she said, that these creatures, or at the very least the one that she saw, are/were extraterrestrial in nature. The way she described the eyes is reminiscent mainly of the alien greys, but also of hybrids and many other races of extraterrestrial that we come across so often here on this channel and in this community in general. Everything about this entity sounds the same as the other encounters, for the most part at least, because each encounter had something different than the others that stood out. Not a single one was exactly like any of the others. Is this another part of the transformation I was pondering earlier? Are these not vampires but hybrids gone wrong or bad? Is the end result the slinking and creeping pale crawler I've covered a couple of times on this channel, or something else altogether? Again, though, I beg the question, what do they want with us? And why are they showing themselves when they could so easily hide, or apparently from the last encounter, vanish? Could it be that perhaps they're extremely unintelligent and don't understand that a dog usually isn't out walking on its own in the backyards of residential neighborhoods for the most part? Do they not understand that calling attention to themselves enough that animals will start behaving erratically is going to bring the animal's owner out to investigate? Are they so unintelligent that they don't understand that they shouldn't be living where they poop when there's no way to get rid of the poop, like in the tunnel? Or are they intelligent enough that they know the owner is going to come running, right? That they know the dogs are going to come to them? I just don't think they're that unintelligent, and I believe there is a method to their madness and a very pointed purpose in showing themselves, but I honestly haven't a clue what that purpose is or what those purposes are. In my opinion, there's no way that they don't know exactly what they're doing, and I believe they are much older than many of the reports about them. In fact, I'm going to look and see if I can find some earlier accounts or connections to other entities with these ones. I'll get back to you guys on that one as soon as I can. Whether or not I find what I'm looking for is another story. Before we move on, I do want to discuss some of the other things this witness reported about what she noticed. She said no ears, no nose. She also said that it seemed to be wearing a jumpsuit with something on the chest where everyone else was really positively sure that the entities were naked. I'm not sure how a normal person would feel if confronted with something like this, but I can't imagine they wouldn't notice the huge alien eyes and the entity having no nose or ears. Meaning, is this just another part of the transition for this entity? Are they all different entities? Are you guys understanding what I'm saying? It's like everyone's noticing a different piece or a different, it's like the same entity, but like a little bit different. Like there's something different with each one's DNA, but they all come from the same family, like cousins or something. If these were the same creature, wouldn't this very observant woman have noticed the mouth? Remember how the other one said that the mouth was so incredibly huge? Is it another entity altogether? Are we back to it possibly being the same one, but each in a different stage of growth, transformation, or something else altogether? In May of 2015 in Dufferin County in Ontario, Canada, another person claims their friend had an encounter that also involved some canine friends. The friend lived on a farm that sat on about 100 acres of land in an extremely desolate and rural area of the county. There weren't many people around, if any at all, at any given time of day or night, meaning outside roaming or wandering. The farmhouse was being renovated at the time, which forced the alleged witness to live in a trailer on the property instead of in the house proper. One night, he was startled awake by the sound of his dogs barking incessantly and wildly scratching at the door, the screen to his trailer. He opened the door to see what in the world had his normally quiet and well-behaved dogs going crazy at that time of night. The person telling the story recounts what his friend told him had happened to him by saying, quote, "When he went to let them out, he was surprised to see bright yellow lights behind and inside the nearby barn. Thinking it was trespassers, he let his dogs loose and went to grab his rifle. He said as he was loading it, he heard his dogs go from barking to yelping to whining. They came barreling back into the trailer and proceeded to hide under the table. Thinking these people hurt his dogs, he stepped out of the trailer and fired 5 rounds into the air and began yelling as he readied another magazine. He got a response when the lights around the barn grew incredibly bright. He admits that at that point, he was pretty freaked out. He said that he stood there for a bit, staring at the lights, when he noticed 2 beings just casually walking across the field toward the barn. Apparently, when he saw them, he was hit with a mixture of confusion and fear. He describes them as humanoid, pale white, tall and thin. Having very small heads in comparison to their bodies, he also notes that they must have been 6'5", with most of that height being leg length. He stated that they moved very strangely. Their upper body seemed stiff and locked, but their legs moved very fluidly, almost bringing their knees to their chest. Understandably, fear took over him. He took aim and fired 3 rounds at the beings, which just made them completely stop moving. Then he noticed a third one to his left very close, but walking away from his trailer. He turned around, went back inside, and went for his handguns when the light outside vanished. He sat inside his trailer with silent dogs until morning. He didn't check out the barn until 2 days later. He found nothing strange there. No burn marks, no holes, all was normal. When checking the fields, he also found absolutely nothing. He told me that he was freaked out for a while afterwards, but nothing strange has ever happened on his property since then, end quote. So what in the world, or is it something from out of this world, could we possibly be dealing with here? Is it all one thing, or is it several different things that only seem to be connected, maybe, somehow? Did anyone else think of the Slenderman entity at all during the descriptions of some of these creatures, specifically the last ones, or was that just me? Think about it, the super tall / white pale humanoid creature that's bipedal with a tiny little head. It gives me the chills just thinking about them, and the phenomenon seems to be so widespread that I can't even figure out what they are, what they're doing. I can't figure it out. It seems they are always sighted in remote locations, but that's most of the paranormal and supernatural. Even most of the time, the extraterrestrial entities we come across are always sighted in those areas too, right? I mean, there isn't really any entity like this that just walks down Main Street during rush hour or hangs out at the mall parking lot on a random Saturday afternoon. There are definitely night walkers, but beyond that, I can't make any more assumptions because I really just don't have a clue, honestly. As always though, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, please. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up. Hit the like button, please. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you just want to see me smile, spread the love by sharing this video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Every Wednesday night, you will find myself and Ghost Dragon ZW from around 7:15 p.m. Eastern time until we run out of people to read for, doing live intuitive oracle. I pull one random card from one random deck for whoever comes in and wants one. But not only do you get a 1-card weekly reading for free or donation, it's also a really amazing community in there, and it's the best chat on YouTube. Hands down, I don't care what anyone says. On Thursday nights from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, you'll find myself, Ghost Dragon ZW, and Miss Paranormal Pixie, Lara, for chillax and chat. Come on in, hang out, same thing, every other Monday. So not the Monday this video is premiering, but the Monday after, It's myself and Ghost Dragons at noon Eastern time, just doing Monday Madness, chilling, chatting, talking about things and stuff. Come check it out. In the description box, and please check the description box out because I did recently change them, make them better, update a lot of the information. You will find links to all 3 of my books, the Kindle and paperback versions on Amazon, Missing the Fae Theory, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, and my 3rd and most recently released book, Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis and Beyond. If you want an autographed copy or for any other correspondence with me, personal readings, information about things that I make, create, and sell, video chats that I do with people for spiritual healing, things like that. There's so much I offer that a lot of you guys aren't even aware of. For any of that and any and all other correspondence, please email me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. I might be putting the word paranormal at the end of my name on the channel. So it's gonna go from Gemma Jade to Gemma Jade Paranormal, but it's still this channel. Also in the description box, you will find links for how to donate to the channel. Donations are how I get paid. Donations are how I purchase crystals and oracle decks, equipment. Even though I'm very low tech now, I do really plan on expanding and, you know, with the editing and the lighting and just a whole bunch of exciting stuff, but that stuff costs money. And if you just want to donate something or buy me a gift, send me a gift through Amazon. My Amazon wish list gift link is in the description box, as well as links for PayPal, Cash App. I'm trying to get Venmo in there. And my Patreon. If you join my Patreon for $20 a month or more, you will get a personal intuitive oracle reading every single month that you make the donation from me to you as a thank you. Also, in the very near future, I plan on fixing whatever's wrong with my Patreon so I can actually do more early uploads and tutorial videos and whatever you guys want to see, like shorts. That's what I was thinking for my Patreon. So I'm really excited about that, and it is all coming up. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Remember, you are incredible. You're worth it. You're amazing. You can do it. There is nothing wrong with you. I totally believe in you. You got this. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.